I'm never driving in the shit again. 0 points. Like, what is interesting in watching this? I'm just driving 1.5 hours in the train. There's no fighting for a position. It's just waiting for someone to make a mistake. Or you're dive-bombing the shit out of them. If it's bad now to overtake, when we get to PSGL or WR, when everyone is prepared, no one is making mistakes, it's just gonna be the same shit. 45 minutes of driving in trains. The thing is, right, everyone is saying increase dirty air, which there is a reason why they complain about it in real F1, but then they increase dirty air. But what they don't understand is that dirty air and slipstream are one-on-one. You get more dirty air, you also should get more slipstream, but they have not coded that in. So you can be 1/10 behind someone and you're getting the same slipstream as someone who's 6/10 behind someone. So you just end up with a shit ton of dirty air, can't get close. It's fucked. Well, yeah, I can say it 100 times, but these fuckers at this fucking company won't listen anyway. They just don't give a shit about esports or anything competitive. But yeah, I mean, if they lose the license, it's their own fault. Ciao.
JD here, and as you can see, we are back on F1 25. But what you could also hear there from Mr. Jarno Opmeer is some very, very strong choice of words, but actually some words and opinion that I agree with 100%. And just to put that into a bit of a summary for you, a big complaint, especially from a lot of the very competitive drivers in this game, and this is something I agree with as well, is that the balance between the dirty air and the slipstream is completely off, or you could say completely wrong. This is something that's becoming a lot more of a problem because it makes overtaking a lot more difficult. And this is something I've had quite a few debates with, and a lot of people turn around and just say, well, it might just be a skill issue, which, yeah, if you are a faster driver, the easier it is going to be for you to overtake, of course. But if you're looking at the likes of esport drivers and even leagues like this, which are very, very competitive, they're not on the esports level, but still very competitive. When people aren't making many mistakes, it is just impossible to get close enough to overtake someone. But I think the big thing is also that the slipstream effect just doesn't match the dirty air effect, and the closer you get to a car, the more of a slipstream effect you should actually have. Whereas here, and Jarno was saying, there pretty much almost is no slipstream effect, and it doesn't really matter how close you are to the car ahead of you, it doesn't get a boost in that effect. And what that means is that it is very, very difficult to overtake on this game, and the DRS isn't particularly powerful, but the slipstream, there is slipstream, but it is very, very minimal. But because the dirty air is so powerful, it just makes overtaking incredibly difficult. And that's something I experienced in this race here today, and something I will be talking about. And again, yeah, the faster driver you are, if you can be on pole every race, then that's going to be great, because track positioning is very, very important in this game. But unless you have a pace advantage of around a half a second more than the driver ahead of you, or you've got a massive tyre delta or you're a different compound of tyre, you're almost going to be stuck behind that driver unless they make a pretty big mistake. And in this qualifying here, I qualified 6th for the final pre-season race, and these 5 drivers ahead of me are the 5 drivers who I'd probably be expecting to be ahead of me in each league race I have coming up. So 6th place, I wasn't too unhappy with. But what really cost me a lot of this race was this start here, the track positioning. But let me know if you agree with Jarno's words and what your opinion is on the balancing of the game. Do you think it is too difficult to overtake? Do you think the dirty air effect needs to be turned down? The slipstream effect needs to be increased? For me, I think the dirty air needs to be kind of nerfed a little bit more, and the slipstream increased just that little bit more, because again, unless someone is making a huge mistake or you have a huge tyre advantage in terms of the wear, the tyre delta or the compound, it's going to make it really, really difficult to overtake. And like you said, in the most respectful way possible, the more competitive drivers you're racing against, the harder it is going to be to overtake them. And I know a lot of people said to me, well, just run lower wings. That will solve the problem. The issue with that is that, yes, you might be a little bit faster on the straights, but then you won't be able to follow as close to someone with lower aero. You'll have less downforce when you're behind them. So for the example here, I'm actually running lowish downforce. I think lower than quite a few people ahead of me after speaking after the race. And with this dirty air effect, which I do like, I like having dirty air. However, I think Spain here, Catalonia, it's probably one of the worst tracks to overtake on because it's pretty much almost flat out the entire time. You just get stuck. You just cannot get close enough. And if you are a third man in a DRS train, so you're not the car behind directly the car ahead of you, if the car ahead of you doesn't have the DRS, then it makes life a little bit easier. But if you are the third man in the DRS train, there's absolutely nothing you can do. So I was pretty much stuck where I was, and I went as long as I could on the medians, hoping for a safety car and just trying to get as much of a tyre delta as possible, because that's really what you need to be overtaking. So I knew people were going to be undercutting me a little bit already. This is a pre-season race, so you can try a few different things. But I think this is going to be a lot more of an issue for races where it's going to be like a one-stop like this. For two-stop races, where you're having a big difference in the tyre delta and the tyre compounds, I think the balancing of the dirty air and slipstream doesn't really matter as much, because you just have so much more pace and you have to really extract your pace as much as possible in the stint. So in those scenarios for two-stop races, I think this isn't so much of an issue. When it does become an issue is where it's going to be a pretty comfortable one-stop. One-stop is going to be the faster strategy, and then it's going to be really difficult. So, see, this guy's making a mistake, and that gives me an opportunity to get past them. So I've caught these guys up quite quickly, and I have a lot fresher tyres than everyone ahead of me, and I'm running a little bit lower downforce than them as well, because I actually spoke to them after the race. So we're going to be catching this group pretty quickly. You see the guy behind me, slipstream effect almost non-existent, so he's not going to be coming back past me. So we're getting the back of this field, and this is something that Jarno was expressing when he did his league race around Hungary, but you pretty much just get stuck. So I'm a lot faster than these guys up ahead. You can see I get a pretty good run here. I'm running lower wings than this guy up ahead of you, and you can see, because he's got the DRS, we have made absolutely no gains whatsoever. And you can see, just with that extra tyre grip that we have, how much we're closing on the braking zone. But you can see, got to be washing out here because we're running a lot closer. So when you get closer and closer, you have more of the dirty air effect. The issue again is that the closer you get, you don't get more of a slipstream effect. That's something that they have to be fixing, especially for the likes of F1 Esports, PSGL, and those most competitive leagues. Otherwise, like Jarno said, I think you're going to be finding it's going to be very hard to be making progress. So again, you can see we get a pretty good run using the battery. We have lower wings than this guy, and we're literally making no gains because he has got the DRS. And yeah, I think something definitely has to change, and that's something that really cost me in this race. Yes, of course, I could have been higher up in the grid and a better start. That would have changed things, but if you are on the wrong part of the track, when you're not in the right position in the race and you get stuck in situations like this, your race is almost effectively over. There is not really much you could do, unless I was like 5 to 7 tenths faster than these guys up ahead of me. That's the only way I'm going to be able to overtake. So you can see, this is kind of an example for 2 laps here where I'm trying to put as much pressure as I can. You can see that dirty effect washing me out wide.
No, you cannot overtake it.
You can hear me say there, it's really hard to overtake it. Again, I think Spain, this track here, is probably one of the best examples of how difficult it is to overtake. I think other tracks it will be easier than this, that's for sure. But around this track, I really hope we don't have this on the calendar, because qualifying is going to be absolutely essential. So you can see, go through here, we get a decent run, washing out wide, and because we wash out wide, track limits, and yeah, there's not much we could do. We haven't made any inroads at all, gaining a lot of time under braking. So I've got to try and really force him into a mistake. That's kind of the only way at this point. I think I had about 3, 2 or 4 lap fresher tyres. Then the guys up ahead of me. And you will see, once I do get past these guys, how much I actually pull away. So it just shows, again. So really try to put on some pressure here, force him to defend. He chooses to go into the middle, which is a pretty smart idea. Gives me really no options. I get a really good run out of here. Again, not really any slipstream threat. He turns off the battery. Big risk to go down the inside. So we have to force him into a mistake. That allows us to go around the outside. And again, that is kind of the only way on tracks, especially about one-stop races, where you're going to be overtaking people when you are like the 3rd or 4th man in a DRS train. So again, trying to put pressure on these guys up ahead and get washed out wide. So he makes a mistake, so that is another position done. And now we're coming up behind Maddie. And you will see, even when the guy ahead of you doesn't have the DRS, you just see the slipstream effect is practically non-existent. You get all the dirty air, but you don't get the benefit of the slipstream the closer and closer you get. So going through to here, almost losing the car there, so that could have been a race completely over. So yeah, we were using the battery here, but he was using the battery again, not going to be close enough. And you will see on this next lap, even though we get a pretty good run, so you can see he goes out wide, we get a pretty good run, we're pretty fast in a straight line, but because he uses the battery, yeah, we're only really getting this DRS effect. Again, the slipstream is almost nothing, and then that means we have to be quite bold and aggressive. And as Jarno said, to make up positions, you're going to have to be pretty forceful to making up positions like that. And yeah, towards the end of this race now, Montana decided to do a 2-stop strategy, and because I was behind those cars, probably lost about 5 to 6 seconds of the race time. So we were behind those cars for a very long time, for about 10 laps or something like that behind those cars. And then towards the end of the race, we actually did start to close in leaders because we do have a much fresher tyre delta. But by that point, the race is over. So I really want to hear your thoughts. Do you think the balance of the game is fine? Again, in the most respectful way possible. This applies a lot more. The more competitive drivers you are going against, the more that this applies. Less competitive leagues or less competitive drivers you're against who are going to be making a lot more errors, you don't really have to be suffering these problems as much. But yeah, I think my setup, my pace was really good. In practice, the pace was more than good enough to be where I need to be. But when you lose that train, you lose the track positioning, and you get stuck behind certain cars, also depends on the track as well. I think this game is going to really show, especially in the likes of PSGO and esports, how difficult it is going to be to overtake around here. So please let me know your thoughts on this. Does the balance of the game actually need to change? And I will be catching you very, very soon. Peace.